My mother-in-law called me her maid and tried to force my husband to leave me if he wanted to inherit, but his choice left her so furious she couldn't speak. I, a 28-year-old female, have been married to Harry, also 28, for about 2 years. Harry and I were friends in college, which is how we met. We didn't start dating until after we graduated, when we ran into each other at a mutual friend's party a few years ago. We've been together ever since, for nearly 4 years, including our 2 years of marriage. Harry and I love each other deeply, and I have no regrets about marrying him. However, the one thing I can't stand is his mother, Olivia. My mother-in-law, Olivia, raised my husband, Harry, single-handedly, a feat that commands respect. Yet, her personality casts a long shadow over her accomplishments. Cold, aloof, and at times insufferably haughty, she makes it nearly impossible to warm to her. From the moment I met her, her disapproval was palpable, like a chill in the air that no amount of politeness could dispel. I've spent countless hours reflecting on why she took such an immediate dislike to me, and I've come to believe it's rooted in my humble beginnings. My family wasn't blessed with wealth. My parents poured their hearts into providing for me and my 3 sisters, scraping by in a world that often felt stacked against us. My father worked as a janitor, his hands calloused from years of labor, while my mother juggled multiple odd jobs, cleaning houses, running errands, anything to keep us fed and clothed. Far from being a source of shame, their sacrifices are a badge of honor for me. My sisters and I carry this pride with us, unapologetic about our roots. Our parents were honest, tireless, and instilled in us values that no amount of money could buy. We've always been proud of them, and we always will be. Olivia, however, wears her privilege like armor, and her classism was evident from our very first encounter. I still remember that initial dinner, a tense affair where I tried to make a good impression. When I shared that my father was a janitor and my mother ran errands for those who could afford her services, Olivia's face contorted, a fleeting but unmistakable grimace that betrayed her disdain. It was a look that lingered in my mind, a silent judgment that set the tone for our relationship. From that moment, she made it abundantly clear, without ever saying a word, that I was an outsider in her world. She didn't need to voice her contempt, her actions spoke louder than any insult could. At family dinners, she kept a deliberate distance from me, as if my presence carried some invisible taint. She'd serve me with different silverware and plates, slightly less refined than the ones reserved for her and Harry. At first, I brushed it off, convincing myself I was being overly sensitive. I didn't want to stir trouble or seem ungrateful, so I buried my unease, hoping it was all in my head. But the pattern persisted, and other incidents chipped away at my denial until I could no longer ignore the truth. Olivia's behavior was rooted in prejudice. Her disdain manifested in subtle but cutting ways. Take her gift-giving, for instance. Olivia runs a successful business, her wealth evident in the lavish presents she bestows on others. One year, she gifted Harry a sleek, expensive watch, its craftsmanship a testament to her ability to afford the finer things. That same year, she sent her assistant on an all-expenses-paid trip to Bari for 3 days, a generous gesture that spoke to her financial clout. Yet, for my birthday, she handed me a knockoff Prada bag, its cheap stitching and flimsy material betraying its $85 price tag, which she didn't even bother to remove. The contrast was stark, and the message was clear: I wasn't worth her effort. That knockoff bag wasn't just a gift, it was a statement, a deliberate reminder of my place in her hierarchy. It stung, not because I craved luxury, but because it confirmed what I'd feared. She saw me as lesser, unworthy of the respect she so freely gave others. Looking back, my greatest regret was my silence. I should have confided in Harry sooner, but the weight of Olivia's disapproval was paralyzing. I'd faced discrimination before, snide remarks about my background, assumptions about my worth, but this was different. This wasn't a stranger or a passing acquaintance, this was the mother of the man I loved, someone I desperately wanted to connect with. I had admired Olivia once, before her true colors emerged. As a finance major who clawed my way through college on student loans, I dreamed of building my own business someday, much like she had. When Harry first told me about his mother's success, I was in awe. Her story of single-handedly raising a son while carving out a career inspired me. My sisters and I, all finance majors, had worked tirelessly to secure respectable jobs, and I was no exception. I've built a career in marketing and advertising, but my ambition burns brighter. I want to create something of my own, a legacy born of my own grit and vision. Olivia's achievements made her a figure I looked up to, which is why her rejection cut so deeply. The silence I maintained wasn't just about avoiding conflict, it was about hope. I clung to the belief that Olivia would come around, that time would soften her edges and she'd see me for who I am, not where I came from. I didn't want to burden Harry with my insecurities, especially since our relationship was built on love and mutual respect. We met in college, where our friendship blossomed into something deeper years later at a mutual friend's party. Those early days were filled with laughter and shared dreams, a stark contrast to the tension Olivia introduced. I didn't want to taint our happiness by dragging Harry into a feud with his mother. So, I kept quiet, swallowing my hurt as Olivia's slights piled up, the separate silverware, the cheap gifts, the way she'd lean away from me as if my presence was an inconvenience. Each incident was a small wound, but together, they formed a scar I couldn't ignore. I wrestled with how to address it. Discrimination wasn't new to me, but this was personal. Olivia wasn't just rejecting me, she was rejecting my family, my history, everything that shaped me. My parents' sacrifices, my father's long hours scrubbing floors, my mother's endless hustle, were the foundation of my strength. To have them dismissed by someone I wanted to impress was a blow I didn't know how to counter. I replayed that first dinner in my mind, wondering if I'd said too much, if I'd been too open about my background. Had I invited her judgment by being honest? Or was her prejudice inevitable, a reflection of her own insecurities rather than my shortcomings? These questions haunted me, but I couldn't bring myself to voice them to Harry. I didn't want him to feel torn between his mother and me, especially since he adored her for raising him alone. Olivia's story of resilience was part of his pride, and I didn't want to chip away at that. Yet, the weight of her actions grew heavier with time. The knockoff Prada bag wasn't just a cheap gift, it was a symbol of her refusal to see me as an equal. The separate plates weren't just a quirk, they were a deliberate divide, a way to mark me as other. I began to see Olivia's behavior for what it was, not just disapproval, but a calculated effort to diminish me. Her classism wasn't subtle anymore, it was blatant, woven into every interaction. I wanted to confront her, to demand why she felt entitled to treat me this way, but fear held me back. What if it made things worse? What if Harry didn't believe me, or worse, took her side? These doubts kept me silent, even as Olivia's actions chipped away at my confidence. In hindsight, I see how my silence enabled her. By not speaking up, I gave her permission to continue, to escalate her slights without consequence. I was so focused on winning her approval, on proving I was worthy, that I lost sight of my own worth. My sisters and I had fought for everything we had, our education, our careers, our dignity. We didn't need Olivia's validation, but I wanted it, foolishly believing it would make our family complete. Instead, her rejection became a mirror, forcing me to confront my own insecurities. Was I enough for Harry, for his world? Could I ever belong in a family where wealth and status seemed to matter more than character? These questions lingered, unanswered, as I navigated my early marriage with a growing sense of unease. Eventually, the weight of Olivia's behavior became too much to bear. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine, not when her actions were a constant reminder of my supposed inadequacy. It wasn't just about me anymore, it was about the family I came from, the parents who gave everything to give us a better life. Olivia's disdain for them was a line I couldn't let her cross unchallenged. I knew I had to speak up, not just for myself, but for the values my parents instilled in me. The journey to that moment was long and painful, but it was the beginning of reclaiming my voice, of refusing to let Olivia's prejudice define me. Because of this, I didn't want a bad relationship with Olivia, so I stayed silent, hoping she would eventually accept me. That never happened, and it became too awkward to address after Harry and I got married. A few months after our wedding, I finally told Harry that I felt uncomfortable visiting his mother because she made me feel inferior, likely due to my family's background and my dad's profession. Harry was understanding and promised to talk to her to clear the air. He did, but it went nowhere. Olivia vehemently denied everything, cried crocodile tears, and claimed she had been nothing but warm to me. She said my accusations of her being classist were uncalled for. This only reinforced my belief that she was manipulative, but it didn't change how I felt. I told Harry I appreciated his efforts, but I still didn't feel comfortable around her. We agreed he could stay in touch with her, but I would avoid her until I felt ready to engage again. He didn't cut her off but distanced himself, and I knew she resented me for it. As a married couple, I had to make peace with Olivia's presence in our lives. We would meet at family gatherings but otherwise kept our distance, and both of us were fine with that arrangement for a while. However, a few days ago, Olivia texted me around noon, saying she was celebrating her 50th birthday and wanted me to arrive a few hours early to mend things. She admitted I had been right about her behavior and said she had been horrible to me in the past. She wanted to make amends. I was thrilled, thinking she was finally coming around and accepting me as family, so I agreed and showed up early. It turned out to be a disaster. As soon as I arrived, she told me to wait in the kitchen. Confused, I complied. A little while later, she came in and introduced me to the waitstaff as her housemaid. She was recording the whole thing and laughing, as if it were the funniest prank ever. Everyone else was visibly uncomfortable, and I was so humiliated that I started crying. I ran out of the house, got into my car, and drove home. I had told Harry I was visiting Olivia, but he was busy at work and hadn't read my text. He wasn't going to be at the party until it officially started, so I returned to an empty house and an empty inbox, which made me feel even more alone. I cried myself to sleep. When I woke up a couple of hours later, Harry was home, sitting beside me on the bed, furiously typing on his phone. When I asked why he wasn't at the party, he showed me a video Olivia had posted. It was the recording of her prank, captioned as a prank gone wrong. She had cut the video before I started crying, so it didn't look as bad, but she still posted it to humiliate me. I started crying again. Harry told me not to worry, as he was working to have the video taken down. He said he would pull out all the stops to ensure Olivia regretted her actions. She wasn't answering his calls or messages because she was busy with the party, but he knew she'd call soon to ask why he wasn't there yet. When she did, he promised to teach her a lesson of a lifetime. Harry kept his promise. About an hour after I woke up, Olivia called. I won't repeat what he called her, but it was harsh. He ended the call by threatening to sue her for what she did to me. Afterward, he apologized profusely for not doing enough when I first raised concerns about Olivia. I didn't blame him entirely. When I first brought it up, I downplayed the issue, so he didn't take it as seriously. I also never mentioned the other incidents that bothered me, and Harry isn't the most observant person, so he didn't pick up on them himself. I couldn't blame him for not cutting his mother off entirely, as he didn't fully grasp how cruel she could be. But on the day of her party, I told him everything, and he was furious. He said I should have told him sooner, and I agreed. He apologized for not noticing how his mother treated me. We discussed legal options with his lawyer, but we couldn't pursue a lawsuit for emotional distress since there were no physical repercussions. Even if we tried, it would likely be a waste of time. I told Harry we didn't need to go after her legally and could simply cut her out of our lives. He insisted that wasn't enough and wanted to teach her a lesson. I could tell he was furious on my behalf, and I loved him for it, so I didn't stop him. The next morning, he told me he had contacted Olivia and given her 3 days to issue a public apology video to me and my family. If she didn't, he would inform her business associates about her behavior, which could ruin her reputation as a female entrepreneur. This negative publicity could harm her future, so she'd likely take the threat seriously. We're on the 2nd day now, and I don't feel good about this. It feels too close to blackmail. I told Harry, but he dismissed my concerns, saying it was the only way to ensure Olivia learned her lesson and wouldn't bother me again. Am I the asshole for letting my husband go after my mother-in-law? As many of you suggested, I sat Harry down after he came home from work and expressed my concerns again. I know Olivia is the bad guy here, but I don't want to stoop to her level just to get back at her. I told Harry I didn't like the idea of using such tactics to force an apology, which wouldn't even be genuine. I asked him to call it off and tell Olivia she didn't need to apologize, as long as she stayed away from us. Surprisingly, he didn't resist this time. Instead, he broke down in tears. I consoled him for several minutes before he explained why he was upset. As many of you pointed out, he was overcompensating for not taking my concerns seriously when I first mentioned Olivia's behavior. I know much of this is my fault because I was desperate to win her approval, even though she hated me. After seeing the video, which has since been deleted, Harry realized how deep-rooted Olivia's issues were and felt guilty. He channeled that guilt into getting back at his mom instead of listening to what I wanted. Talking it out made him realize he was repeating the same mistake by not taking me seriously. It probably doesn't help that I'm quite submissive and struggle to assert myself. We discussed this, and he texted Olivia, telling her there was no need for an apology and that he wanted nothing to do with her. I'm proud of both of us for handling this well, making it us versus the problem, not us versus each other. Harry and I care deeply for each other, which is why it was hard to address our biggest issues. We've agreed to look into marriage counseling to work on our communication. I've started researching options and hope to begin within the next week to ensure incidents like this don't happen again. This has been one of the worst experiences of my life, and I never want to feel that way again. I'm glad Harry is cutting Olivia off because I don't think I could see her again without wanting to smack the arrogance out of her. I won't do it, but I hope someone does. A week has passed since the party, and Olivia didn't contact us after Harry's ultimatum. She didn't even respond when he told her he was calling it off and didn't need an apology. We suspected she was planning something big because she's not one to let things slide. But days passed without incident, so we started to move on. However, today, Olivia showed up at our house with her lawyer. When I opened the door, she walked in without acknowledging me, as if I wasn't even there. She started calling for Harry, telling him to come to the living room. It was absurd since Harry was in our bedroom, and I was going to get him anyway. She didn't need to act like she owned the place. Harry told her he'd do what he wanted and didn't want to speak to her. He asked her to leave with her lawyer, saying he wasn't intimidated. Olivia insisted he sit down, claiming he'd want to hear what she had to say. I told Harry to comply just to get it over with and get her out of our house. I was ready to listen to her threats, legal or otherwise, if it meant she'd leave sooner. Harry sat on the couch, and I sat beside him to show her we were in charge here. She continued to ignore me and instructed her lawyer to read a document she had prepared. The document stated that she wanted Harry to leave me, or she would write him out of her will, giving her assets to other family members, her employees, and charity. It included a detailed list of her properties and assets, likely to intimidate Harry into thinking about what he'd lose by staying with me. Harry seemed unfazed, even bored, as he fiddled with my wedding ring during the reading. When Olivia asked if he'd thought about what he'd do, knowing he'd lose her inheritance if he stayed with me, Harry stood up, walked over to her, gave her a big hug, and said, "Goodbye, Mom." It was hilarious watching her face shift from triumphant to shocked. I couldn't stop giggling. Olivia finally acknowledged me, snapping at me to shut up and throwing a tantrum, calling me several choice words I won't repeat. I ignored her, pretending I couldn't hear her, knowing that would infuriate her more. Harry didn't argue with her either. As she continued screaming, he suggested we return to our room, saying her meltdown was embarrassing, and he didn't want to witness it. We spoke to each other calmly, as if she wasn't there, which further enraged her. Then she went too far, accusing me of being a gold digger. She said she never should have approved our marriage and should have known I was only after Harry's money, especially since my dad was too much of a loser to earn any himself. That crossed a line. She has no idea how hard my dad worked for us, and I wasn't going to let her disrespect him. I didn't argue but calmly told her that my husband was rejecting her despite her wealth, so I was anything but a gold digger. I'm a working woman who doesn't rely on Harry's money and never has. I told her to get out of our house before I called the police to escort her out. She finally left, but her visit left a bad taste in our mouths. It was unpleasant, but we got a lot off our chests, and she knows not to mess with us. Hopefully, she'll keep that in mind and leave us alone. 2 weeks have passed since Olivia's visit, and we thought the chapter was closed since she didn't contact us afterward. Harry and I assumed we could resume our normal lives. Clearly, we were wrong. About an hour ago, my parents called, saying Olivia had visited their house, and it was awful. She barged in, insulted them, and called them terrible parents who raised a gold-digging, conniving B-word like me. She said worse things about me, but that's not what offends me most. She told my mother that if she had spent more time raising us instead of running errands to earn money, we might have turned out better. She insulted my dad's profession again, saying that since he was used to cleaning up other people's trash, it was no surprise his daughters were the filthiest. My parents were nearly in tears recounting what she said. Thinking about her yelling at them in their own home makes my blood boil. I'm at work right now, so I can't do anything immediately, but as soon as I'm done, I'm heading to Olivia's house to confront her. She needs to be taken down a peg. I texted Harry about what happened, but he's busy at work and hasn't replied yet. I don't want him to come with me, but I informed him so he's not blindsided when Olivia inevitably calls him crying about what I say to her. I'm back home now, having returned from Olivia's house about 3 hours ago. I swear, shouting at her and letting her know exactly what I thought of her was incredibly satisfying. When I arrived, she opened the door with a smirk, which set me off. I was already fuming. I pushed past her, went inside, and asked if she had visited my parents and said those horrible things. When she confirmed it, sounding pleased with herself, I wanted to wipe that smirk off her face. I screamed at her as loudly as I could, so loud I felt the house shake. She was so taken aback that she stepped back. It's almost comical now, but she was genuinely shocked because I'm usually quiet and soft-spoken. I even surprised myself with how loudly I yelled. I called her a hypocrite and a sad excuse for a human being. I told her she had failed as a mother because she couldn't prioritize Harry's happiness over her own, which is why she was trying to tear us apart. I said it wouldn't work because Harry and I love each other, something she's incapable of understanding. It was a low blow, but I went further, saying I was glad her husband passed away when Harry was young because he probably wouldn't have survived living with her. I called her worse than whatever disease he had. That's when she started crying, but I didn't stop. I kept yelling for several more minutes until I ran out of steam. By then, she was sobbing inconsolably, and I was satisfied to see her break down. She had made me feel terrible about myself and my family, and worst of all, she insulted my parents for no reason. She deserved this. After she started crying, I stormed out and came home. About an hour after I returned, Harry came home. He said he got off work early but didn't come straight home because he thought I'd be at Olivia's. He went there but arrived just after I left. The door was open, and he found Olivia curled up on the couch, crying her heart out. I thought he'd be mad at me for making his mother cry, as she rarely shows emotion that way, but he said he was proud of me for standing up for myself. He gave me a hug and apologized for what Olivia said to my parents. He then shared what he discussed with her before coming home. It was a short conversation, likely one of the last times he'll speak to her. He told her we're going no contact, and if she tries to mess with us again, we'll file for a restraining order. Apparently, Olivia repeated what I said, including my comments about his father, expecting Harry to defend her and leave me for going too far. Instead, he told her that while it was his father I was talking about, he wasn't offended because she had said much worse about my family. She had it coming. They argued, with Olivia accusing him of not caring about her and siding with me because I'm soft and innocent. Harry clarified that he was on my side because I was right. I never went out of my way to hurt or belittle her, unlike her actions toward me. Even when confronted and given chances to improve, she didn't. Instead, she tried to gaslight me. Now that I was standing up for myself, she couldn't play the victim. Harry walked out while she screamed for him to come back and leave me, but he said he'd made his choice and didn't care about anything else. It was sweet, and we had a cute moment afterward.